Your brain is hiding something from you, and it does it every day. You've felt it before. That moment when something feels certain, even though you can't explain why. That quiet confidence that tells you, this is true. But what if that feeling isn't true at all? What if it's protection? What if, in this very moment, your mind is already deciding what you're allowed to notice and what you're not? Your brain was never designed to show you the truth. It was designed to keep you alive. Long before logic, before reason, before curiosity, the mind learned one simple rule: survival comes first. Accuracy was optional, so the brain learned to edit. It smooths over fear. It reshapes memories. It filters reality until it feels safe enough to accept, not because it's evil, but because comfort keeps you functioning, and that creates a problem. Because if your mind is willing to change reality to protect you from discomfort, if it's willing to hide, distort, or soften what you perceive, then how much of what you call reality is actually just a carefully constructed version? Your brain decided you could handle it, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. The brain lies to itself because it has to move fast. It doesn't have time to analyze everything in front of you, so it takes shortcuts. These shortcuts are called patterns. They save energy. They reduce uncertainty, but they come at a cost. What you experience isn't raw reality. It's a compressed version, assembled from assumptions, expectations, and past experiences. Your memory works the same way. It doesn't replay the past like a recording. It rebuilds it. Every time you remember something, your brain reconstructs the event, filling in gaps, smoothing details, quietly rewriting parts that don't fit anymore. That means the more you remember something, the less accurate it can become. Emotion makes this worse. Strong feelings act like filters. Fear sharpens certain details. Comfort blurs others. Facts that clash with your beliefs are softened. Facts that support them are amplified. Over time, accuracy becomes less important than coherence. So confidence steps in, not because you're right, but because certainty feels safer than doubt. The mind would rather feel sure than be correct. And that realization leads to something far more unsettling. But this is only the beginning. Once the mind starts editing reality, it becomes easier to guide, not through control, but through suggestions. One of the simplest tricks is authority. When someone sounds confident, wears the right title, or speaks from a position of status, the brain lowers its defenses, not because the information is better, but because questioning feels risky. Then there's familiarity. The more often you see an idea, the more natural it feels, not truer, just safer. Your brain mistakes repetition for reliability, exposure for evidence. An idea doesn't need to be correct, it only needs to be familiar enough to stop feeling threatening. This is why repetition works. Say something often enough, in enough places, and the mind stops asking where it came from. It starts asking why it ever doubted it. And then there's silence. Silence is uncomfortable for a reason. When no one speaks, the brain rushes to fill the gap. People agree just to end the tension. They confess just to make the quiet stop. They comply because uncertainty feels worse than surrender. Words persuade, but silence pressures, and most of the time, you never realize it's happening, because the most effective influence doesn't feel like an influence at all. Most influence happens without force or awareness. Then something stranger happens. A moment that feels impossible to ignore. You walk into a room you've never seen before, and somehow, you know it, the layout, the atmosphere, the feeling that this exact moment has already happened. Déjà vu. For a few seconds, reality stutters. Science says it begins with a delay, a tiny timing error between different parts of the brain. One system registers the present moment, another labels it as memory. The result is familiarity without a source. Your mind flags now as then. A neural misfire. A processing glitch. But that explanation doesn't fully satisfy what it feels like. Because déjà vu doesn't just feel familiar. It feels important, as if something is being remembered rather than mistaken, as if meaning is hiding just out of reach. The unsettling part is this: science can explain how the error might occur, but not why the experience feels so personal, so vivid, so specific, so convincing. And in that brief moment, the brain does what it always does best: it creates a story, one that insists this moment matters, that it's happened before. The brain insists it has been here before, even when it hasn't. And when the brain can't explain something, it becomes restless. It searches for meaning, for certainty, for something to hold on to. This is why silence feels so powerful. When sound disappears, the brain loses its anchor. No cues, no direction, no confirmation that everything is fine. Silence feels like a social threat because, for the mind, uncertainty equals danger. So it rushes to fill the gap. Thoughts get louder. Assumptions multiply. Doubt creeps in where noise once kept it away. This is why silence is used in interrogations, not to extract information, but to let the mind unravel itself. Given enough quiet, people start talking, not because they want to, but because the pressure becomes unbearable. Awkward silence works the same way. It feels physical, a tightening in the chest, an urge to say anything just to restore balance, because the brain would rather say the wrong thing than sit with nothing at all. In silence, the stories you tell yourself become impossible to ignore, and that's when the mind reveals what it's been hiding. Silence forces the mind to reveal itself. All of this leads to the same place: the lies, the influence, the familiarity that appears out of nowhere, the discomfort of silence. They aren't separate experiences, they're different expressions of the same instinct. Imagine someone alone in the dark, not trapped, not in danger, just unable to see. At first, the darkness feels neutral, then uncomfortable, then unbearable, so the mind starts working. Every sound becomes a signal. Every shadow becomes a shape. Patterns appear where none exist, not because they're real, but because nothing feels worse. That's what the brain does with uncertainty. When information is incomplete, it doesn't wait, it fills the gaps. If the truth is unclear, it invents a version that feels stable, a story. Influence works because it offers ready-made answers. Silence works because it forces the brain to create its own. Déjà vu works because familiarity feels safer than confusion. And self-deception works because certainty calms the nervous system, even if the certainty is wrong. Even if the story is false, the brain isn't asking, "Is this true?" It's asking, "Does this make me feel safe enough to continue?" And when faced with the unknown, the mind makes a choice. The mind would rather believe a lie than face the unknown. And once you understand this, something changes, not in the world around you, but in the way you notice it. Every confident thought becomes suspicious. Every familiar feeling invites a second look. Every moment of certainty carries a quiet question, because if your mind can edit reality, shape memories, borrow familiarity, and invent stories in silence, then it's been doing it far longer than you realize. Not to deceive you, not to control you, but to keep you moving forward without stopping to ask what's real. So the question isn't whether your brain lies to you, it's how often you mistake those lies for truth.